Hello, long lost friends. I'm sorry it's been a little bit since my last upload, but as I said on Instagram, I was on a trip for a week, and to be honest with you guys, I've been a little bit not only out of time, but uninspired. However, I think it would be really fun to do a Q&A on this channel again, since I tend to get a lot of questions that I don't always get around to answering in the comments. So if you'd like to post comments in this video over the next couple days, I'd love to make a questions and answers sort of video probably next up if I get enough questions. So do comment down below if you're interested in that. Anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about at the present moment. Today I want to help you guys understand or kind of lead you through some self-discovery perhaps in my tips on how to learn choreography or just pick up combinations quickly. It is very important to be a fast learner in ballet. It's a very prized quality for sure. Now, like, don't stress if you don't feel like that's your strength. I'm sure you have other strengths. Everybody's got their thing, but I think everyone could benefit from working on always being sharper and learning faster and picking up more details. It will never fail to serve you, believe me. I think that's actually why I ended up getting a contract at the company I dance with now, is because I was noticed as a fast learner. You'd be surprised how good of a quality it is to have. Anyway, that's enough chit chat. Let's move on to point number one. So point numero uno is to identify what type of a learner you are. Of course, none of us fit perfectly into any category, so you won't like only be a visual learner, but it helps to know generally which kind of direction you sway towards, and that is just going to help you really grow in your process as a fast learner. So the three main types, there are more than this, but the three main types are visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So a visual learner in the context of ballet will be a person that could just like stand there and not even tap out a beat or kind of say a rhythm in their head. They could just watch a teacher demonstrate a combination, and as long as they have the undivided attention with their eyes, on the teacher, they can pick up a combination. That's, I think, pretty self-explanatory. The second I mentioned was auditory, which is the one I tend to fall under. For auditory learners, I'll speak for me personally. The ways that this plays out is I don't necessarily have to watch something being shown unless it's like intricate or maybe contemporary, like something I haven't done before. But if I know the rhythm, if I could hear what the teacher is saying and it is explanatory, like if oh my gosh, the worst thing for me is when a teacher will show combinations and only count. So they'll be showing tendus and it could be an intricate pattern. It could even be a basic pattern, but I have much harder of a time picking something up if they're just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not with any rhythm either. Like, that is the worst part. Like, it would at least help me if they're like saying and a 1 and a 2 and a 3, like maybe with a snap in there or something. I do really well when I can hear a rhythm, and maybe if they're not explaining everything, I watch, but putting what I see to a rhythm and almost making like a song in my head, if I could replay that when I'm dancing, I can retain and pick up choreography very, very quickly. Another way this could play out is also by, maybe this goes for rehearsal, not necessarily class. Like, if you know what choreography comes at certain points in the music, you can hum it out and that will help you remember choreography. So if you're one of those people, you're likely an auditory learner. The third thing I mentioned, or third category I mentioned, was kinesthetic learning, which is when someone needs to try something for themselves or kind of like feel it in their own body to retain it. So those are the people that could watch a combination and maybe seeing and hearing kind of helps, but they kind of have to like do it with their hands or kind of like act it out in some sort of way. It could be subtle, but they kind of feel like they need to internalize the feeling in order to pick up and retain choreography. All right, so once you've kind of identified what type of learner you are, also just side note, there are tests online you can take for free to kind of identify that. I've done it before. I think it's a part of a college class. So if you're an online test kind of a person that loves like personality tests and things like that, totally go Google search that and you will find all that to your heart's content. But anyway, once you've found generally which method serves you best, find a method within that mindset that serves you. So like not all visual, auditory, kinesthetic learners have the same method that serves them best. Again, since I'm an auditory learner, I'm just gonna do my best to explain through that lens because I think that's what I can articulate the most from my experience. Sometimes it helps to hum or make a song in your head of like, sometimes I'll say, you know, as the teacher is explaining things, if they're not explaining it clearly, like maybe if they're saying the combination to a rhythm, I could just take what they said and plug it into my little brain and replay that as I dance, and I can immediately recall what they taught. But if they don't do that, I'll start making one in my head. So say again they're doing tendus, and it could be like 2 slow tendus, 3 quick, and I'll say, and tendu 1, tendu 2, and 3, and 4, something like that, to some sort of a beat. You know, I think you get where I'm going with that. Or in rehearsal, I will hum the music in my head and maybe use like a kinesthetic method of like practicing in my body and getting that feeling while also putting that to the song in my head. That really helps me. For visual learners, I'm not sure how many different variations on that there could be, but I think giving your undivided attention to what's going on and what's being demonstrated is paramount. And also using your ears to kind of always be alert of what's happening so you know what you need to be looking at, where the person is. You know, it's like I said, it's not always just one thing. Like you won't just use your eyes or just use your body or your ears. Anyway, I think all that's obvious, so I'm going to move on to the next point. Okay, so this next tip goes for all types of learners. You need to really work on not taking your ears or eyes off of the teacher, and this will help with your attention as well. I know it's easy to just sit here and say, don't take your attention off the teacher, but like if you make a policy out of following what they're doing, if they're calling the shots, you need to really have your eyes glued on them. That will really help in honing in your focus. And another tip is just to really get out of your head a little bit. Stop thinking so much about yourself or what you think you're gonna mess up. Don't worry. Stress is actually a huge enemy of learning quickly. If you are stressed out about making mistakes, and if you're thinking about that ahead of time, that is going to completely tear away your focus from someone demonstrating a step. I do this all the time, and I know I'm not the only one. I think it's just a huge culprit of of taking away someone's focus is to not stay in the present moment. Focus on purely what you have to do right then and there. And don't allow yourself to think about maybe mistakes you made or something else outside. It doesn't even have to make mistakes. Like, just really make a policy of being strict, of keeping your mind in the present moment, being so focused and not thinking about what comes next, which is irrelevant. Like, obviously you can think ahead and anticipate choreography or something like that, but if you are thinking about your next class, your next rehearsal, that's going to pull away from your ability to pick up something that is being given to you right then and there. If you especially have issues focusing, I think something you could really do to improve yourself and improve your focus is to just investigate how much effort you're putting into each moment. I think for myself, I've noticed the more mundane I see each day, each class, if I'm getting bored, I'm usually not focused, and that usually is a sign that I'm not investing all of my effort into what I'm doing. I'm not really trying to better myself as much as I possibly can. Even if you feel like a class is boring or too simple for you, you can always try to make it better. And if you are putting your best effort into each moment and challenging yourself and almost having a sense of play with your classwork or with rehearsal or something like that, if you're just invested completely in being your best in that moment, usually negative thoughts will, be out of your head. You won't be stressing about what you might do wrong or what you might have already done wrong. You are just totally in it to be your best, and you're usually focused, and you are more prone to learning quickly, or not just learning quickly, but digesting choreography or steps quickly. It's not just about knowing what comes next, but putting those steps into your body and feeling comfortable even in new, unfamiliar moments. Really going for it, if that makes sense. Another tip is to make mental notes anytime a teacher or choreographer really emphasizes something. That seems obvious, I know, especially since choreographers and teachers will often say, like, remember this, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes what I notice is that I will start to pick up on patterns really easily, and so I can learn quickly because I'm good at identifying patterns. And that's also a big learning tip, but I think I'll get into that later. So when I notice a teacher making a unique adjustment or a particular step, like maybe something that's not usually emphasized, like close from retiré to susu on 6 and then turn around on 7, close 5th on 8, start the left side, something like that. If they make the effort to emphasize that and you're not accustomed to hearing it, make a mental note and rely on what you already know to carry yourself through the things in what they showed that are familiar to you, if that makes sense. So instead of thinking so much about the combination, that might be pretty simple. Rely on your muscle memory to pick that up and to digest that quickly so that you can invest your mental energy into those unique little things that a teacher or a choreographer might give. Don't disregard something that they emphasize, even with their tone of voice, not necessarily their words. Like they may not say, guys, everybody pay attention to this, but whew, you will be picked out as a fast, good, attentive learner if you pick up on those details. Never blow off those little details or assume that you won't remember it or that no one else is going to get it either. Look for the unique counting or steps or a different arm and fixate yourself on that. You pick up on that, and that's going to train your eye, your ears, your body, whatever, for picking up details. My next tip is to really use common sense. That sounds ridiculous that I have to say that, but it is shocking how many people simply disregard the need for common sense, okay? So especially if you are stuck in a detail or you feel like you have a question or you're a little fuzzy on a sequence of steps, think about it for a second before you get caught up in wanting to ask a question. This especially comes into rehearsal work. It is crazy how many people simply don't use common sense and they want to ask really silly questions and take up time with the rehearsal staff. And this is a huge thing in the professional realm. Like, if you waste the staff's time asking silly questions that you could have just thought about for a second and answered it yourself, or maybe turned to a colleague and asked them, or, just take a second to think about it, it usually warrants keeping quiet instead of just asking a question. So just whenever you can, try to implement common sense and logic before wasting time or energy on trying to ask a question or worrying about little details. Usually the answer is within the realm of common sense if you just tap into it. So I kind of touched on, or I mentioned, identifying patterns. This is huge for learning in any capacity, not just in dance. But if you familiarize yourself completely with common structures of ballet class, or transitions in choreography, like always know the default, always know the common structures, the common practices, the common transitions and steps, or how they link together. If you are familiar with that, then it will be so much easier to learn quickly, because if any new step that's being shown to you fits within a certain structure, this especially goes for ballet class. It's like giving your brain a multiple choice sheet instead of short answer. You know, you can use process of elimination. If you know the musical phrasing within ballet that's commonly used, you can typically anticipate the timing of certain steps and what might come next, the number of, like, how many dégagés you have to do, something like that, or how many rond de jambes. If you are very familiar with common practices and structure, that's going to help you learn so much faster, because then you could focus on the details that maybe aren't as conventional. I also said be in the moment earlier, which is totally valid, but you do need to be anticipating each step slightly. Like in each pause or any moment you can get, be completely sure of what is coming next. Lastly, if you make a mistake, just brush it off and go to what you know. Don't spend time dwelling on it, because that just completely defeats efforts to try to salvage a step. Oh my goodness. Like, any combination where you mess up, which is quite frequent, like everybody messes up, but I've seen so many dancers completely self-destruct because they focus on making a human error in one moment, instead of just saying, okay, whatever, moving on. You know, like, usually things happen so fast, you don't have time to dwell on some mistake you made. So really just focus on brushing it off, moving on, because nobody has time to waste on past mistakes. You know, as the old saying goes, no use crying over spilled milk, right? So anyway, I'm just gonna finish the video here. I hope you enjoyed it and that you benefited from it in some capacity. And don't forget to leave comments and questions down below. I would love to read them and answer them shortly. Anyway, I will see you guys soon. Bye.